Mark O'Mara with us here on the Bill Riley Show. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Bill. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's good to have you on today. This is great. I got to cover you for a few years. I lived and worked in Jacksonville, Florida for a number of years, and was not too far from the Players' Championship. We did hole-by-hole coverage for about 4 years, from about 95 to 2001. So that was kind of your sweet spot, too. That's when things really took off for you on the tour.
Yeah, no, listen, I've been blessed. I've had a fun time out there. I'm 62 now, so I've been doing it for 39 years. But you're right. I mean, the game is it's great. I was just listening to your opening comments. You know, obviously this is a big week this week, starting up late tonight, which is obviously early time over there at Port Rush, and the Open Championship. It's the final major of this year. We had a new schedule, as we all know. I mean, starting off at the Players' Championship and then the Masters, and the PGA was thrown in there, and then the U.S. Open. So, you know, here we go, the Open Championship. Somebody's going to be crowned Sunday champion golfer of the year, which is a pretty great honor.
You've played in them all, and they all have their own feel to them, and they're all special in their own way. I grew up in Kansas City, kind of going to Tom Watson Junior Golf Championships and junior golf clinics and things, and Tom always had an affinity and spoke very highly of the Open Championship, and he was kind of an adopted son over there. You've played and won at the Masters. You've played in the U.S. Open, as I mentioned. But what separates the Open Championship, Mark, as a guy that got to play and win over there?
You know, Bill, I would tell you that of the four major championships, to me, that one is I put it pretty much at the highest regard, because it is the Open Championship of the world. It's regarded around the world as kind of the championship to win. The claret jug, the history, played on links golf, which kind of, that's the way it all started, you know, and in the old course and St. Andrews, and, you know, the rotation that they move it around, and it hasn't been played in Northern Ireland since 1951, I believe, was the last time they played the Open Championship, you know, over in Ireland. And to have it at Port Rush this week, you know, it's just going to be spectacular. And as you pointed out, you know, so many Irishmen have played so well. You know, you look at Rory, you look at Padraig Harrington, you look at Darren Clark. You know, there's just guys that have reached that pinnacle, and you know, it's going to be something to watch this week.
Port Rush hasn't been, you know, there's kind of a rotation of these courses, and we always hear about Royal St. Andrews or Royal Birkdale where you won in some places. But what do you know? Have you played Royal Port Rush? What do we need to know about this course that may separate it from some other British Open courses?
Well, I haven't played it. I've played Royal County Down, which is just down the road, but I played with Darren Clark a couple of weeks ago in the U.S. Senior Open at Notre Dame, and I was asking Darren about it, and he informed me that it was going to be very important to drive the ball straight this week coming up. And I think a lot of it is because he said, yeah, the Bombers always have an advantage. You know, like he pointed out, Brooks has played well, DJ, certainly Gary Woodland, the way he performed at the U.S. Open at Pebble. But he felt like there was going to be more guys in the mix, and certainly you have to throw Rory in there too, because he's extremely long, and Tiger, with the experience that they have. But he felt that more players would be in the mix because you're going to have to hit the ball in the fairway. And I was just watching some of the highlights this morning on Golf Central, and the guys were over there, and that first hole with out of bounds left and right, and the wind blowing at 15 to 20 miles an hour. I mean, you're going to have to keep the ball in the short grass, or relatively in the short grass. If you're way offline, you're going to be hugely penalized.
Mark O'Mara is our guest here at the Bill Riley Show on ESPN 700, two-time major champion, British Open champion in 1998. And we're looking at some of these tee times. I'd be curious, our local guy, Tony Finau, our guy from here in Salt Lake City, he's had some good runs. Didn't play well necessarily in the U.S. Open, but as you look at Tony's game and you've seen how he's kind of come along, and I don't know if you're friendly at all with Tony, but I'd be curious to know how you see him right now, Mark, and where he is in his development, and how he might fare with his game this week over at Royal Portrush.
Well, I think the world of Tony, first of all. I'm happy for his really good success that he's had, and he's a class act out there on the golf course. There's no question that he could be in contention this week. I mean, he's got all the tools, he's got the game that he could possibly win a major championship. I think a lot of it is certainly this week, looking at the tee times, as you pointed out, I mean, luck of the draw does play a decent playing field in trying to win the Open Championship, because sometimes you can get a bad draw. The weather can change within 2 or 3 hours over there very quickly. So I think that event, to win the Open Championship, you have to have a little bit of luck, but you have to be very patient, and you got to be tough mentally, because you're going to get some bad breaks here and there, and you just can't let it affect you. You just got to realize that, the whole field is going to be challenged, and you just got to try to rise above that.
Mark, he tees off, I think, at 2:47 a.m. our time, 4:47 Eastern time. So folks that want to watch Tony Finau are going to have to take a power nap and get up really early to watch him here. What do you remember about your win? You won it in a playoff, if I'm not mistaken. Did you beat Brian Watt? Is that who you beat in 1998?
That's correct. And the scoring, the weather was brutal there at Birkdale. I played well there in '89. I'd won a European Tour event there at Birkdale, and in '91 I was in the final group on Sunday with Ian Baker Finch, and we certainly I watched close at hand. He win the Open Championship. That would be Ian Baker Finch in 1991, and then come back 7 years later as the Masters champion, and playing well on a golf course that I loved. I believe I think I shot something like 68 or 72, 68, 72, 68, and par was 70. So the cumulative score of even par tied Brian Watson and went in the 4-hole playoff, and I won certainly in the 4-hole playoff. I think I was maybe one under, and he was, I believe, one over for the 4 holes, which I think is a great thing. Certainly, Bill, a tournament of that magnitude, to have just a straight sudden death playoff, maybe not the greatest thing, but a 4-hole cumulative score, I think, is the correct way to determine your champion.
Mark, I'm a big believer, and I've covered enough sports in my time and old enough to know that I think in team sports, home court, home field, home whatever, is maybe overrated by guys like me and the media. People will hype that up. But I wonder, in an individual sport like golf, where you're playing different courses, the Masters is the one that stays the same, but you're playing different courses. How much of an advantage is it? These guys are the best in the world, but maybe a guy like Tony Finau's played a couple of practice rounds at Royal Portrush, where a guy like Darren Clarke or a guy like Rory McIlroy may have played this course 50 times. How long does it take you to get comfortable? Conditions are the same for everybody, but how much of an advantage is it for guys that have played this course versus guys that haven't?
I think it's a big advantage. I think certainly guys like you pointed out, Rory and Darren and Graham McDowell too, who grew up on the course. So they've seen it in all these different conditions, and certainly over there in links golf in Ireland or Great Britain or Scotland or England, where I won at Birkdale, the weather, the wind can blow in so many different directions. And so the more you get that under your belt, I certainly think it's a little bit of an advantage. But on the other hand, when you look at the Claret Jug and you look at the names on that trophy, it is quite amazing how many Americans, have won the Open Championship. As you pointed out earlier, Tom Watson, a 5-time Open champion winner, darn near 6. So Americans tend to play well on links golf, which you really would think that they would be at a disadvantage, but yet, no, they rise to the occasion. And I think a lot of it is just the uniqueness of playing links golf, intrigues an American player. So, Tony's got the game to compete and play well, and he's won tournaments. There's no question in my mind he's got the power and he's got the touch around the greens that, he could be a factor this week. It wouldn't surprise me to see his name up there on the leaderboard.